wise mentor who's there with you to help you through that process, or also or an inner guide who can help you through that process as well. And then at the end of the whole process there, what can be very helpful is you should actually write down a story of everything you just went through. It's a great way to record it all, keep it fresh in your mind, and then you can even put together mental images around that as well. I mean, I just, in terms of my own productivity, I found it very helpful. I'm most productive when I'm incredibly focused on things. And so in a session I did with guided imagery, I had this visualization of what I call in my mind a blue laser of focus. I just, for whatever reason, they just popped into my mind. And so that's a kind of a mantra that I use when I'm to be incredibly focused on things. So I do want to recommend Rita Polakimian. She's a business coach in San Francisco, and the last couple of years I've been through her annual personal planning session for the year, and she uses guided imagery, and I would certainly recommend Rita. Any questions about guided imagery before we move on to the last 2 points here? Please.
So, when I did the vision board, so I've done the vision board a couple of times.
Yeah.
I have trouble with the fact that, I mean, it's basically, there's no reason, right? I just pull out pictures that just pop at me, and it may not be immediately relevant. So I guess, because maybe I'm impatient, in one way, especially with the way the culture that we're in, like we want fast results, right? And then the vision board is like a futuristic thing. So how do you bridge the gap between what you are visioning for yourself and what may be coming out of from a subconscious level into what you do right away to get there?
So I'm going to hazard a guess at your question, Preeti. I also want to mention I'm not I haven't had training in this. I've just been through it about a dozen times. So take my answer with a grain of salt. But I can tell you from doing it for about a dozen times myself, what I found is sometimes I have, to your point, or I'm thinking I have noise coming out, or kind of mental images that are coming out that are just not really helpful or valuable or beneficial, and I just kind of have to clear my mind of them, and then I can get to the nugget of value. Okay, and for those of you that haven't done guided imagery before, let me just give an example of what Preeti and I are talking about and what can happen. So let's say I did a session on giving presentations once with my hypnotherapist, and she asked me she said, okay, this was not about tonight's presentation, although that would have been helpful too. And the hypnotherapist said, okay, you're now imagining someone, a wise person who you really respect is in public speaking. They have just shown up to help you, to guide you through this presentation. And who is that? And for whatever reason, I had some noises coming out, or I had some people I was imagining that weren't really relevant. And I just had to clear my mind of those images. And then I came up with Bill Clinton. And I just visualized that Bill Clinton was there, and then he stayed with me by my side during the entire visualization. And at the end, she says, well, now Bill Clinton has just given you a gift. He's given you something and put it in your hand. What is it? And I just visualized a gold star, kind of like we get as a kid. When you do a good job in school and you're 7 years old, you get a gold star. So I felt like Bill Clinton was saying, good job, Mark. And so that was just something that I felt. And so then when I gave that presentation later, I was doing this visualization every day leading up to the presentation, and then even the morning of, and then I visualized holding that gold star and Bill Clinton being with me for that presentation, and it went very well. I had great calm about the whole thing. So that's how it can work, but to your point, Preeti, there can be a lot of noise that you have to work through as well. I know I'm going to say one more word before I move on to deliberate practice. I know if you haven't tried guided imagery before, it can sound kind of woo-woo California, okay? But take a leap of faith and try it. But try it has to be someone you trust and is really excellent at it. I can recommend someone, by the way, if you want to try. We're just focused on career coaching. We don't do it, but it's too woo-woo for us. But I personally believe in it, and it's been great value. Deliberate practice. Anders Ericsson from Florida State University is really the lead theorist behind this. It's not a theory, it's a developer of this. And what he has found, and a lot of other deliberate practice research, is the only factor that predicts how excellent you are in anything, or I am in anything, is how much deliberate practice we've had. All right, what is deliberate practice? It's much about, it's a lot of the things that we've talked about in terms of working with a mentor, where you develop a career plan, and then you have to get brutally honest feedback. Okay, for us to achieve anything, it can be very uncomfortable to get brutally honest feedback, right? Ashok mentioned earlier, I was on a salsa team, salsa performance team for 3 years, and I thought I was just the world's greatest salsa dancer. At the end of the 3 years, 2 weeks before the performance, my teacher, who I have tremendous respect for, he's one of the best salsa dancers in America, without exaggeration, and teachers. He said to me, Mark, the way you're dancing, you kind of look like a RoboCop. And the next week, so then I started working real hard. I don't look like RoboCop. I'm much better than that. I worked harder at it during the week. Came back the next week. He said, now you kind of remind me of Frankenstein, the way you're dancing. And I don't mean that in a good way. And so what happened was that was incredibly difficult feedback to hear, but he was absolutely correct. It was not the dance for me. I did the performance, switched over to a tango the next week, and that was 7 years ago, and have never looked back. And then performed the nationals in the spring. So it was back to one of my earlier slides. You've got to find what's really best suited for you, and that's what in deliberate practice. There are genetic limitations. I played basketball as a kid, but I was never going to be a center in the NBA, right? I don't have the height. There are genetic limitations. But when there are not, if you look at Tiger Woods, you look at the world-class athletes, it's really about deliberate practice. And so what that means is developing your goal, a very specific training program, and then the activities you're going to take to acquire that skill set, and working with an expert coach. You have to work with an expert coach, whatever you're doing. In tango, there are tango dancers that I see, they've been dancing for 15 years, or 7 years since I've known them. They're at the same level today that they were 7 years ago. They're not working with expert coaches. And then lastly is your inner critic. Anyone have, I'm sure no one here has any inner critics. What I'm talking about here, an inner critic can run a spectrum. This is the last one of the night here. For some people, it can be, our inner critic can be more, not a critic so much, but more of a second voice, a second opinion, devil's advocate. A lot of times mine will say, Mark, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Other people say, well, they're always doing a risk analysis of certain running risk scenarios. That can be one spectrum. It can be normal things like, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? That was just stupid. And these thoughts pop up occasionally or with some regularity, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, where it can be loud, frequent, and debilitating. Okay, the one woman I was coaching recently, more on this end, is doing a job search. She said that she's been looking at jobs and the job requirements, and she had 90% of the requirements they were asking for, 90%. And she was like, well, I have to apply for this job. Her inner critic jumps up and says, you don't have 10%, don't apply for it. And her inner critic was winning those arguments. Okay, this is how the inner critic can hurt us, can be debilitating. There's inner critic, you know, it's a surprise for a lot of people to find out that it's actually inner critic's trying to help us in a lot of ways, which can be surprising for people, trying to protect us in certain ways. But don't try and block out your inner critic. It's just, it won't work. There's not only this workshop in December, but also I know there are workshops up in Marin that I've seen on inner critics that seem excellent. And so what we've covered tonight, not everything is deep as I would have liked, but just to bring it home. Oh, I just have to show you that photo before we leave. Maybe not everyone knows Donnie, but this is it's been fascinating for me. I'm always just studying expert performance. What an extraordinary coach he is. Obviously, the captain of the World Cup team in 2010 for India, this is what we covered tonight. Discovery, your first 3 months, future races, accelerating your speed. Just like I'm talking about the importance of feedback, I crave feedback, positive or negative, I just crave it. We'll send out an email later, Ty will. Please send me your feedback, whatever you got out of it, whatever that was of value, what was most valuable, but what can be improved, what needs to be improved. It can always be improved. It'll make it better next time. At CareerNav, I've got 5 career coaches there. We're working with individuals and now starting with companies as well. If your company, obviously the individuals pay when they're doing it individually, but now with companies, the companies will be paying, and our coach will be doing the coaching to no cost, obviously, to employees. So if you think your employer might be interested in that, possibly let me know. And there's my contact info there as well. I think that covers it for now. Come up to me individually if you have any further questions, and thank you so much for having me here.
Mark, that was really amazing. Next time we should include a tango lesson as well. I think that would be appropriate. So just a quick question. We are thinking of making this part of our regular programming. Did you guys find it useful?
Thanks.
Okay. Well, that's good feedback. And as Mark said, please feel free to contact him directly. You can talk to him now or later. And let's give Mark a big hand. I think it was great.